for another afternoon tea with docs, the UK's lifestyle medicine hub where we offer the walks, community, coaching, and education to help you prevent, manage, and reverse chronic diseases such as obesity, heart disease, hypertension, high cholesterol, and even some cancers such as bowel and breast cancer. My name is Dr. Linda. I'm an emergency medicine physician here from Sheffield, and I am here with my amazing co-host, Dr. Erica, who is a GP from the West Midlands. And we are both board certified lifestyle medicine physicians. Now, it's so lovely to see so many faces on Zoom joining us live. And to have with us consultant Nicholas Witton, who is going to be speaking about the effect of light on sleep and our health. Such an important topic nowadays when there's so much light pollution and also a lot of insomnia due to our working patterns. If you would like to learn more about sleep and how you can change your lifestyle practices, then you can join us as a free member on afternoonteawithdocs.com. And if you haven't said hello yet on our social media, do say hi and let us know how you're doing on Instagram, Facebook, and also on LinkedIn by searching for the handle Afternoon Tea with Docs. If you're joining us on YouTube, please do hit the subscribe button so that you help us with your support, and comment or let us know what are your questions so that we can answer them in our next session.
So Nick is an experienced sleep and performance coach with a demonstrated history of working in the elite sports and wellness industry, working with athletes and executives who want to improve their daytime performance. He specializes in using an individual's body clock to peak cognitive and physical performance. Having completed a postgraduate degree in sleep medicine from the University of Oxford, he is now researching in his master's degree, focusing on circadian rhythms and the role of light on sleep and performance. Welcome, Nick. Welcome back, actually.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. Yeah, it's great to be here and great to be discussing light. It's a message that I'm very keen to get out into the open and into the public, and also find out from your perspective as doctors what sort of training happens through light, or how the people talk about light, or also whether or not the behavioral medicine side of things touches the effects of daylight as well.
Yeah, so tell us, before we start, tell us what got you into researching light and sleep. What interested you?
Sure. So I've been researching the effects of sleep on performance for well over eight years now. And initially I was working with athletes, looking at the effects of recovery and sleep, and how that can be utilized to peak performances throughout the daytime. And from there, from there, I've been researching the effects of sleep within the workplace and how we can improve sleep cultures within our workplaces to kind of increase productivity, but also increase just the general culture within a workplace as well. And from there, what my research kind of led me on to is the fact that we all understand that sleep's really important to us, and everybody does it, and everybody knows someone or themselves has a sleep problem. But what seemed to be the kind of precursor to this is that the fact that we all live in kind of consistent dim light. And the more and more people I was speaking to, and the more research that we did, we found that the correlation between this lack of daylight correlated with negative sleep, and the negative sleep and having difficult kind of sleep periods would then lead on to short-term effects for cognitive effects, and then long-term physical and mental health effects as well. So for me, it seemed like daylight was the starting point, and the effects of daylight. And so from there, I've been researching how you can utilize daylight to improve your performances and realign your body clock. And I've been looking at like different wavelengths and how they affect your alertness, but also how they also affect your sleep as well.
So what are these cognitive and mental health effects that you're talking about?
Of sleep. So short term, you see, so that's shorter than 5 days. You see when people are tired, you see people that have lower moods. They have more likely to act in immoral behavior, so they're more likely to cheat and lie. They're more likely to take credit for other people's work. Short-term effects of sleep also include things like accident rates go much higher as well, and just general lack of alertness throughout the daytime. Over 5 days, you see more serious risks. So you see things like increase of cancer risk, and see increase of just general, nearly every mental health disorder out there has a bilateral relationship with sleep. And then you also see things like heart disease as well, an increase in heart disease if sleep is disruptive for a lot longer than 5 days chronically.
And you mentioned, we all know that sleep is important. Yeah, it's interesting that sleep is one of the first things that we would give up to fit things in our social calendar, our work calendar, and it's one of the things that we tend to compromise.
Absolutely, yeah. It's the first thing we all give up, really, isn't it? It's if you have a choice between getting up and going to work very early because you need to finish something off, or if you want to go to the gym before you go to work, people will always choose those daytime activities over sleep. And similarly in the evening, if you're going for a drink after work, or you're going to socialize, or you want to watch a film late at night, very rarely will we think to ourselves, actually sleep is the higher up in the priority of any of that. And in fact, it's the first thing really that we'll quite happily give up without even kind of thinking about. And that's mainly because most of us think of sleep as this kind of inconvenient period between wakefulness. So it's almost like the shorter that I sleep, the better. You see things online previously, or there is a social rhetoric of, I only slept for 4 hours, look how well I'm functioning. And it's almost like a badge of honor. But I think more and more people are getting to realize that sleep is vital. So it's not even a pillar of your health and well-being. It's the foundation to it. It's the foundation to what all the other pillars stand upon. So without your sleep, your performance levels or your increase of whether or not it's cognitive health, mental health, or physical health can't really be improved or even peaked to when you need it to.
Mm-hmm. And I guess this leads us quite nicely onto the different clocks. Can you go through those with us?
Yeah, so most of us all live to our own social clock. So if you think about, we firstly got our social clock, which is the times that we have to go to work or the times that we socialize. And that's normally when we decide to get up or go to bed. It's also when we decide to eat and do other daily functions as well. So we've got that kind of one clock which we live to. And then we've also got the sun clock as well. So the sun clock is the day-night cycle, which changes throughout the year in the extremities of the hemisphere. And so that you end up having times when it's bright sunshine and then periods where it's completely dark as well. And so that's the second clock. You've got your social clock, you've got your sun clock, but you've also got your internal clock. And your internal clock is your genetic disposition to when different hormones fluctuate and peak throughout, and different functions occur throughout the body. So every single cell within our body has their own clock, and they're monitoring the clock consistently predicting and readjusting to when it thinks the time is, depending on certain cues such as when you eat, when you exercise, but mainly when you have consumption of light. And so these smaller cells all feed into your main cell within your SCN in your brain, and that sets a time of your body clock. So you've got your body clock, you've got the sun clock, which is the day-night cycle, and then you've also got your social clock with when you normally have to live. And what happens is that the social clock pushes into the other two clocks. So it pushes into the timing of when your body wants to rest and recover. And then it also pushes you into the darkness, maybe when you want to be working late at night. So you use artificial lights to when actually your body's saying, I know I want to sleep. So your body is constantly trying to readjust to what you're doing socially. but also readjust to what's happening to the light outside and the light exposure that it gets. And what we see now is that a lot of people have, or the majority of people spend nearly 90% of their time indoors. And because we're spending 90% of our time indoors, we are under artificial light, like I am now, predominantly all of that time. Very little time do we actually get daylight. Maybe some people sit by a window, but the majority of us don't spend our time outside, whereas our ancestors had our houses, and then we would go outside and spend the day outside. And daylight is the strongest cue that the body takes to help regulate its body clock. So daylight is so powerful and so strong that it will tell your brain that it's this time of day, and therefore my internal body should be functioning and doing X, Y, and Z. Whereas if we don't have those cues and they're not very strong, our body can't predict what time it is, and therefore anticipate the time of those functionings within the body. And so just to give you a small clue, a small understanding of the difference in light. So we measure light in lux. So if you think of 1 lux is 1 candle, so 10 lux, 10 candles. And then if you, in a normal room like I'm in now, it's maybe, 200 lux. The average is around 300 lux. And outside on a cloudy day, it's around 10,000 lux. So the difference between inside and outside is huge. On a bright sunny day, like it is today outside, it's could be up to 100,000 lux. So that's a lot of information and messages that are going to the brain to say it's bright, it's a lot, we need to be alert, and we need to be active, and it stimulates your activity. When we're in constant dim light, we don't see the same stimulation.
Yeah, so there's there's a desynchronization of the 3 clocks that we live to. And because 90% of us because we're spending about 90% of our time indoors, we're losing the cue from the sunlight to allow our body to kind of work
harmoniously as well. Yes.
Yeah.
So the best way to describe this is everyone is kind of aware of melatonin. So the melatonin is the hormone which facilitates the onset of sleep. So if you look at just before, around 2 hours before you go to sleep, the sleep architecture will show an increase of melatonin within the body. That's a steep rise in the increase of melatonin within the body. And this basically, it doesn't get you to sleep, but it opens the door to sleep. So it facilitates, it allows you to then induce a sleep period. Whereas if our hormones are in the wrong order, or fluctuating at the wrong time, or even expressing at the times when other hormones should be expressing, you basically then don't get the buildup that you need to then help you facilitate the onset of sleep. So the best way to think about that is that the sunlight outside will help your body know what time it is and set a clock for all different functions within the body, such as things like your metabolism, your urine production, and all different things that occur without the body, all are set by your body clock, which is determined by light. And so if we're not getting the right cues for the right light, we're basically struggling to function in the way that we need to, and we end up consistently being functioning well below our capabilities. And the other thing to mention about that is that the longer that you are outside of daylight and you don't get the cues that you require from daylight, you become desensitized to it. So then when you go back out there, you're not quite as able to pick up the cues, and your brain isn't able to pick up the cues as proficiently as they were previously. So the longer we spend in daytime without daylight, the less sensitized we are to daylight in the future.
That is so interesting that that happens. You wouldn't think that. I would have thought that actually the less you're exposed to it when you go out, maybe you'd be more stimulated by it, but actually it's the opposite.
Yeah, exactly. I think that you. I think when you're outside, our eyes are so brilliant, so that they change from a period of being inside to a period of going outside, so that you end up not realizing the difference. So that you think, there isn't too much of a light difference, and you can't physically feel those cues going in. So it's only when you're outside that you're actually getting the cues that you really require.
Mm-hmm. And so you've mentioned sunlight, and we've mentioned artificial light. Can you give us an overview of light?
So the light spectrum, the visible light spectrum, is the colors that you can see. So the colors of the rainbow that you can see, and there are different wavelengths, and the longer they get. So the shorter wavelengths of the UV, the purple light will go to blue, and then all the way to the longer wavelengths, which are red. But this visible light sits in a much broader stream of wavelengths, from radio wavelengths through to near infrared or infrared wavelengths, and then on past UV light, and then onto gamma. And so basically you end up having light which is a whole range that you probably would only get through sunlight. So sunlight which you get actually isn't just visible light, but it also gives you UV light, and it also gives you infrared light and near infrared light, and they have different health benefits as well.
Yeah, so what sort of health benefits does, because I think you're doing quite a bit of work on infrared light, aren't you?
Yeah, so I'm looking at the red band of light and looking how that can increase alertness without stimulating, without inhibiting melatonin production. And there's a possibility of that in the evening if you are having kind of a red stream of light, which enables you to see and still work. There is a possibility, and there are some papers that have been out recently that suggested that melatonin doesn't then become inhibited, which it does under very bright light, but also under a blue and the cyan wavelength of light in particular. But the infrared light in general is you end up having it's called photobiomodulation, and that basically means that it goes much deeper into the skin and it affects the cells. So it can stimulate the cells. It can cure the kind of not cure, but almost kind of what's the word I'm looking for? It kind of allows those cells to be looked after in a sense that they can recover to the possibility of where they were previously. So sunlight has been shown to give you a much broader strength of health benefits rather than just artificial light. And one of those is UV light. And most people understand that UV light comes from the sun, and that our bodies create vitamin D through UV light. And if we have too much UV light, then you become sunburned. But what most people don't understand is that through double glazing, UV light cannot penetrate through. So you end up not having enough UV light coming through. And so therefore your body cannot stimulate and create vitamin D as well.
Okay. I do apologize, Nick. I think we are having some issues. Just take a pause for a moment. Just technically, I think there are some issues going on. So apologies.
I'm going to close the chat box.
Mm-hmm.
Apologies, we are going to mute everybody. And after the interview, we'll be going on our Zoom chat so that you can actually say hi and ask your questions, so you're not going to miss out on it. But it seems like we have been spammed, so sorry for that. And we will resume the questions later. Sorry, thank you, continue.
Sorry, where were we? Oh, I need to unmute Nick.
Thanks.
We were talking about the UV lights.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And UV light has been also shown to help with increase healing within the cells as well, in a similar sort of way that infrared does in the lower part of the skin. But if you have too much UV light, obviously it can be increased risk of cell damage, which you see through sunburning and then some sorts of skin cancers as well. So UV light is important to make sure that you're aware of it and that you're not being overexposed to it, but it's also really important that you are receiving enough of it to allow your body to function in the way it should do.
You also talked about the infrared light effect on our health as well when we had our chat before.
Yeah, that's
Can
right.
you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, it's been shown that the regeneration of deeper cells has been have a possibility, and infrared light in general. There is a couple of very new studies that are occurring. One in the Netherlands, where they're looking at installing infrared light into offices and into lamps, and that will then give a full spectrum or a bigger, fuller spectrum wavelength of light coming in and allowing for certain healing properties as well. A lot of them are still to be figured out and to be understood, but they believe that things like you can reduce your heart rate. It can help improve on things like several cancers as well. But as I said, they're not 100% dealt with. I understand, like for a lot of surgeries, they use things like gamma ray, and they use things. Have you had to deal with that at all yourself?
Not personally, because I'm not familiar with surgery, but Linda used to do surgery, so she might know more about that.
It's a similar sort of thing. So it's basically looking at the different wavelengths can affect and be targeted to different areas as well for it. But what they're looking at is for general use is trying to incorporate the effects and the health benefits of the sunlight into natural or artificial light generally.
And is this different to the circadian lights that are coming out as well?
Yeah, so a lot of offices that is different, because circadian lighting is looking at changing the wavelength structure throughout the day to kind of mimic the sunrise and the sunset. So you will have brighter white light, more blue light in the middle of the day, and longer wavelengths in the morning and later on in the evening as well. So circadian lighting is a changing in lighting in a similar way our laptops change from blue to orange late at night. It's about changing the light spectrum that goes in. But what's really important is that some research has come out recently to suggest that it's not just the blue light that stimulates and inhibits melatonin, but it's all bright light. So any light over a certain frequency will have an inhibition over melatonin in itself. So it's very important to be aware that if you're in the evening and you're getting rid of your blue light, it's not just blue light that you're getting rid of. It should be all bright lights. And actually, in recent times, there's been a report from the Manchester group here in the UK to give optimal lighting throughout the day and spectrums. So you can basically know that you should have an increase of over 250 lux throughout the day and nothing more than 10 lux in the evening. So if you think of that as the brightness of 10 candles, that should just allow, what that will do is in the evening, that will allow your body to recognize that it's becoming dim and allow your dim light melatonin onset to occur, and then help you facilitate that evening of sleep.
So putting this into practical terms, because if I, even when I dim the lights in my room, say in the evenings, I don't really know how many lux of lights I'm exposed to. Is there any easy way for people to work that out for people at home?
Well, I would say the best thing that you could do is just reduce the lights to the point where you feel safe and you feel confident that you can move around and not put yourself in any harm or any danger. So lighting is important. Like most people think, I'll turn the lights right down and then you've just got to make sure that you are comfortable in your environment. Your eyes do adjust to very low level lighting. So one of the things I would suggest is that you can buy things like salt lamps, which emit a kind of a more of a red hue in the evenings, and they emit a much lower lamp. But having spotlights on and having very bright lights when you're having maybe 300, maybe 400 lux in your living room, or particularly in your bathroom, which is often the brightest room in the house. And if you have that exposure for over 15 minutes, then you're going to inhibit your circadian timing. So it's just making sure that it's reducing the light gradually, particularly an hour before bed.
Okay, so an hour before bed, we should dim our lights to a comfortable level where we can still kind of move around without tripping ourselves over, and safely kind of move around the room. But talking about bathrooms then, as you said, the bathroom tends to be the brightest room, and that's usually the last room that we go into before we go into our bedroom. And we know a lot of people do wake up in the night to go to the toilet, and then they turn on that bright light in their bathroom. What any kind of suggestions as to how to go about this?
Yes, so a lot of people who I speak to have that problem, and that light stimulus, even if it's depends how long they might be in there for, but if you can buy, there are sensor lamps that you can get that attach to somewhere like a cupboard possibly, and they can give around 10 lux or 10 lux and below, and that will then allow you enough light to see without having to be bombarded by spotlights, which most people have in their bedroom, in their bathrooms nowadays. You can also have one in the bedroom as well to allow you to move around without having to turn a big lamp on or anything else like that. But I wouldn't worry too much about it because if it's the length of time that you're exposed to that light. So if you're exposed to a lot of light for over 15 minutes, then it's going to start affecting your alertness levels and your circadian timing as well. Whereas anything kind of less than that, it will have less of an effect.
Mm-hmm. And just to reiterate that it's not to, because we hear about blue lights a lot these days, but and there are blue light blocking glasses and things like that, and we know also with kind of TVs and screens, mobile phones, and computers, they now have function to turn on the kind of the yellowing. I think it's called Flux, the one that I use. Is that helpful?
Well, blue blocker glasses will basically block out the blue wavelength of light, and that has got the strongest circadian stimulation. However, any bright lights will. So if you're going to work, or if you're traveling back on the bus or the train or whatever, and you think it's quite, then you can go and either use blue lights to reduce the amount of blue light coming through from the white light that you'll get, or you can just try and wear, I don't know, glasses which are maybe got a slight tint on them just to reduce the amount that's going into the eye. I think what most people have got to realize is that we've got individual lighting needs. So we all have a different body clock and all have a different timing of that. So some people are more sensitive to light than others. It's been read somewhere yesterday that people with lighter color eyes may be more sensitive to light, but whether or not that's to be seen is still need to be replicated. However, if you know that you're sensitive to light, then it's about those windows where you might be exposed to light either on a bus or on a train or in the bathroom or in the kitchen, or if you're in a car or something and you've got bright lights coming at you. It's that then you can kind of just kind of reduce the amount of light that's going into the eye. But similarly, if you're an evening person, then your clock can be much later, so you might naturally go to bed much later, say midnight, 1 o'clock, something like that, and therefore the stimulation in your eye needs to be or less stimulation in your eye needs to be at around 2 hours before that. So it's about knowing when your natural time to go to sleep is, and then reducing the light intake before that. And is that just by experimenting to work out when our own natural time to go? I think so, yeah. So you can look at like one of the best ways to know your circadian clock timing is on if you're on holiday and you've got more than 5 days where you can actually relax and recover. I mean, not many people have the luxury of that in their day-to-day lives, but if you're on holiday for a week and you don't have to get up for anything, you can then try and see what time you naturally would wake up and naturally would get tired. And it's in the same way we're all different heights, we all have different circadian timings. So there's no right or wrong. Some people are early morning people, some people are late at night. I think from my understanding there are around 7 different chronotypes, which is what they're determined as. But the majority of us kind of sit somewhere in the middle.
Okay, and just going back to the light in the evening, and I remember when we were talking, you mentioned that it's not just the spectrum of light, but also the brightness of light. So, so even on phone screens and computer screens and television screens, which people do use until, right up until bedtime very frequently, and they think that perhaps turning on flux or the yellowing of the screen actually is enough to help. But actually they also need to turn down the brightness of the screen, don't they?
Absolutely, yeah. So if you think of it as when it's nighttime, you want it to be as dark as possible. When it's daytime, you want it to be as bright as possible. But if you're in the same office or in the same room, or if you're watching TV in the same room with the same lights, and it's consistent throughout the entire day, then you're not actually going to have any pattern of fluctuation up or down. And so in the evening, if you can reduce the light sensitivity, reduce the light intake on your laptop or on your TV screen, or just generally around the house, then that then tells the body that it's becoming dark, it's becoming nighttime, and then it helps facilitate the sleep process. One of the key things to think about is sleep is that if light is the main senses coming on, you can't just turn off that light and then fall asleep. Sleep is more like landing a plane. So it takes gradually, you go down into a point where you then enable your brain to then switch off and fall asleep. So if you're having lots of light stimulation and your brain's going, I really want to get to sleep, then it pushes it further and further along. So you end up staying up for longer and then incur more kind of sleep debt, as your brain is saying, actually, I'm really tired, but I better stay awake because I've got so much light intake going on. I think I need to be awake and alert at this moment. So it's making sure really that you can help your brain and learn roughly when you should be trying to sleep and when you should be trying to wake. And then you can start to time, we do the 3-2-1 thing. So 3 hours before stop work and make sure that you're not doing any exercise. 2 hours before, try not to have any major meals past 2 hours before you go to bed, and 1 hour before you reduce the light and reduce the kind of any kind of over exerting activity, and reduce the screen time really within that last hour before you go to bed. And what we found is that a lot of people are able to sleep, not just get to bed and go to sleep quickly, but also to stay asleep throughout the night. But they're also able to wake up at the time when they most appropriately want to wake up. So it's about making sure really that your brain is in sync with what your daytime activities are allowing it to do. So trying to get to sleep at nighttime is fundamentally one of the most important things you can do in your daytime behaviors.
So actually preparing for sleep starts as soon as we wake up, really.
Absolutely. Yeah. And exactly. And likewise, so as soon as you wake up, you want to tell your brain, hold on a sec, it's daytime. Let's get alert. Let's get a light. Let's start the clock for daytime now. And so we can do that by having breakfast by a window, or going for a walk, or just getting as much daylight as possible. And just making sure that your brain is now aware that it's active and it's kicking off. Rather than trying to work too far away from a desk, or sitting on a bus all the way into your offices and then hopping out, what you can do is get off at the bus stop before, and maybe if it's not raining, walk the last stop, or getting off of the tube for the last stop, and then allowing yourself to have daylight. And then throughout the day, try and get as much daylight as you can. Try and either, if you can, hot desk by a window, or go outside. If you can't do that, then go outside and have breaks outside. So people have been seen to be more productive when they return from a break if they are outside, if they don't take their mobile phone with them, and if they're with someone else talking about non-related work subjects. So they're the three things that you want to do if you are taking a break, to get out of the office or wherever you're working and get some daylight as well. But I think this is a major thing that we need to install generally, and this is great why you guys are doing this, is that we need to prescribe daylight as a health healing thing. People are aware now that of SAD, and people are aware that if you are struggling with mental health issues, daylight is one of the key things about having regular daylight and regular dark light in the evening. Is one of the things that you can do to support your mental health. And this is, hopefully one of the ways, and the reason I'm hopefully doing this talk is that people can then start the conversation about daylight. If you're seeing patients, or, so how much daylight do you get? Would you say you spend, do you get 10 minutes in the morning? Or, can you get an hour's worth of daylight before midday? Because that will then really kick on the circadian system.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned something very important earlier about sleep debt, and that ties into social jet lag as well, which a lot of us are experiencing. Can you speak more about that?
So social jet lag is a recently coined term that suggests that most people nowadays are, the precursor is they don't have enough light. They don't have enough daylight, and they have too much artificial light in the evening, and so they're not able to then sleep properly throughout the night. And because of other commitments, so work or family or social commitments, the timing of which people can sleep is reducing. And then when they are asleep, they're struggling to be asleep because they haven't had enough daylight. And so what happens then is we all need different types of sleep. Like, we're all different heights, we all need different types of lengths of sleep. Some people survive perfectly well on 6 hours worth of sleep, and some people need 9 or 10 hours to function anywhere near their capability. And so what we need to really do then is allow all of us to really get the sleep that we need. And if we're not getting the sleep that we need, we will then, over maybe the 4 or 5 days, sleep in for a longer period at the weekend. So instead of getting up when we would normally get up, say 7 o'clock on a Friday morning, on a Saturday morning, we'd maybe sleep until 8, 9, 10 o'clock. And people are trying to create more sleep by having it on the Saturday and the Sunday at the weekend. But sleep doesn't really work in that way. And the reason that doesn't work is because sleep isn't the same as saving money, where you can save different amounts on different days and then have the same total. What happens is that you need enough sleep over a period to have good quality sleep. And that quality will do certain things. So it will help restore memories and consolidate memories. It will help your recovery process, and it will help your cell process as well. And so if we don't have enough sleep throughout the day, then you don't have the right quality of sleep, and you can't then have that built up on the Saturday and the Sunday. And so what that term is, a kind of jet lag between the weekday sleep and a weekend sleep, and that's the social jet lag.
And this is why a lot of people wake up very tired on Monday when they have to then get up at 7 o'clock or earlier, because then they, waking up a couple of hours earlier than they have been at the weekend. Absolutely.
And if you think about jet lag, that's exactly what jet lag is. So jet lag is fundamentally going to another time zone and then trying to function then. And if you're having a different time zone on the weekday as you are on the weekend, then you're effectively being jet lagged throughout the day, and you have all of those repercussions of drowsiness, of lack of alertness, lack of cognitive functioning throughout the day. And just as you start to pick up, it will then be the end of the day, and your brain will be saying, well, I'm still on 6 o'clock, and the actual time outside may be 10 o'clock. And so you won't be wanting to go to sleep, and therefore it's going to take a number of days to do that. So the best thing you can do is try and keep regular times for sleep, and throughout the day, weekday and the weekend as well. So try not to fluctuate too much throughout it. We're not all fortunate enough to set our own work times, but if you can wake up naturally and wake up nearer your internal clock time where you want to be woken up, you'll reduce your social jet lag as well.
Mm-hmm. So getting enough sleep, so regular sleep pattern, but also getting enough sleep during the week and not just leaving it all till the weekend. So we're having similar hours of sleep and timing of sleep throughout the entire week from Monday to Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, it's in an ideal world, yes. I understand that most people struggle to do that, but to try and keep it as consistent as possible. And that requires the valuation of sleep, and actually trying to value your sleep as much as you can, and saying to yourself, right, this is a time I'm going to dedicate to myself by allowing myself to sleep. There's been some research about waking up to alarm clocks. So if you wake up to an alarm clock, what happens is you've woken up to an alarm clock at the time where your body is not ready to wake up. And you're not ready to wake up. So the alarm's gone off, and it's a loud signal. And the loud signal is then setting off an alerting signal within the body, the fight or flight mode. And what happens is you then go, oh gosh, I'm going to put snooze on. So your body then is still in a state of shock. The adrenaline's running through the body, but you try and then go back to sleep because you're still so tired, and then it goes off again, and you get that second shot. And so what we do is we wake up to an adrenaline spike. And as you guys can tell me more than anybody else, having an adrenaline spike is probably not the best way to start your day, because it's only going to end up in more adrenaline required or a bit of a crash.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I know that snooze button very well. I'm somebody with 10 alarm clocks because I'm just worried that I'm not going to get up in time. But actually, I found when I do travel, so I'm from Hong Kong, and when I travel to Hong Kong, because of the time difference, in the summertime it's 7 hours, in the wintertime it's 8 hours difference. And what I do, I tend to actually sleep with the curtain open. So I allow the natural sunlight to give me the signal to help adjust my circadian rhythm to that time zone. And I do have an alarm clock that brightens up slowly to help wake me up in the morning. And I do find that really helps me to wake up with less of a shock and much easier to get up without that, oh my gosh, I'm so exhausted.
Yeah. And your sleep inertia is that feeling when you first wake up and you're like, I can't function, but often for people the sleep inertia should last maybe around 20 minutes or so, but for other people it will be much, much longer. And if you're driving when you're not alert and you're in that level of sleep inertia, that's when you see huge, accident rates go up, and because vigilance is much lower. So you're dead right to try and use a lamp or alarm to try and wake you up and use that circadian lighting to work. And if that works for you, then great. And particularly good in the winter where we are at the moment. You don't have the light that you require first thing early in the morning.
And I know Linda has something to say. I don't want to forget this. That we want to also work out, don't we, what time we need to wake up, to work backwards as to when we should be going to bed, to kind of reduce that, because we don't want to wake up in the middle of a sleep cycle. Is that right?
Yeah, so sleep cycles are roughly 90 minutes to 100 minutes long. And within that sleep cycle, you would have different forms of sleep. So you start in light sleep, and then you go to non-REM sleep, which is previously referred to as kind of deep sleep, and then you have REM sleep for a short while, which is where a lot of your recovery processes occur. And so that's one cycle, and then you normally would have of 90 minutes, and then you normally would have maybe 5 cycles, which equate to 7.5 hours. And the longer the cycles go on, the more the REM sleep increases. So the first cycle will have a very small part of REM sleep, and the 5th cycle will have a much larger portion of REM sleep. So if you're sleep deprived and you're cutting out the 5th cycle, you're actually cutting out a lot of your REM sleep, which is where your dreams occur. But also, as I said, is a lot of consolidation occurs, memory consolidation, and repair occurs there. So that's why one of the reasons that we should be sleeping for in the length of time that we need, but also allowing us to make sure that we wake up at the end of a cycle when we're back in light sleep, so that we then don't feel groggy. Because if we wake up in REM sleep where our brain is functioning as much as it would, or even more so during the daytime, therefore you're going to feel really groggy, and you're going to feel like you haven't slept well, even though you probably have.
We have a few practical questions that we get in hospital a lot, so it would be great if you could answer that. Karen in the chat brought up a common problem when they do go to bed on a regular basis. Karen goes to bed at 10:30, but unfortunately wakes up at 4 a.m. And I know that there are quite a few practices that we could advise our patients and our listeners what could they do to actually stay asleep.
One of the main reasons, I don't know every case individually, so I'll just say as a generality, one of the main reasons that people wake up too early is that they're going to bed too early. So they're going before, so their body clock might naturally want to wake up a bit later, but they're going to bed too early, and so therefore their sleep pressure is dissipated by 4:30, 5 o'clock, and therefore they wake up again. So there's a thing called sleep restriction therapy, which you should only really do with someone who's qualified with CBTI, but that pushes you back. So you have to go to bed later, and then that forces you to sleep for a longer period of time. So one of the first things I would say is make sure that you're going to bed when see if you can push it back by 15 minutes, see if you can push it back by, half an hour or so, and then go to bed at 11 o'clock rather than 10:30, and see if you can then restrict yourself from being awake, to restrict yourself from being asleep, to then hopefully push it back the other end. The other thing is, like, nowadays we get a lot of light coming through. People often have blackout blinds, but there's often light still coming through. So that I would make sure that we just double check the internal lighting or any electrical lighting, make sure all the little red buttons are off, or anything else in the room, that it's as dark as possible. And then finally, I would say that sometimes if you're waking up at 4:30, if you add another 90 minutes onto that, that's another cycle. So what you could be doing is waking up at the end of maybe your 4th cycle, and which you naturally do anyway. So we all kind of wake up at the end of each cycle, but we don't normally remember it, and we go back to sleep again into the next cycle. And so what's happening is you're waking up, and if you've got things on your mind, or if it's too light, or if there's lots of stress going on, then you will often wake to full consciousness. So what you can then do is just say to yourself, this is frustrating, this is quite not where I want to be, but make sure you're not checking your phone or overstimulating yourself. And then just try and get back to sleep by not trying to sleep, because good sleepers don't try and get to sleep. They just naturally let go of being awake. And so the best way you can do that is have things like distraction techniques. So having lists that you compile, or questions that you've got, or maths questions that you may have in your own head, and just try and distract your brain from fully engaging to all your life's thoughts and worries and problems. And so that you can actually kind of allow your brain to still kind of stay in the state of relaxation to then initiate another period of sleep.
And another thing we could mention here is food. If you're eating too far away from our sleep, then maybe you're waking up because you're hungry, and your glucose is deficient, so it's waking you up to possibly eat something. So maybe having a look if you're eating too early your dinner, then pushing it back a little bit by an hour or two could support you sleeping a little bit longer. And how about red light before going to bed? Is that something that we should be using?
So if you're working late into the evening, if you are working in an office or at home or in an environment, what the research out there is suggesting is that the red wavelength of light at a certain kind of not too high intensity will then allow you to maintain your alertness levels without inhibiting your melatonin. So if you had the same intensity of blue light, it would then begin to inhibit your melatonin and stop you sleeping. So or stop the melatonin rising and that stopping your sleep period. So one of the things that we're looking at and we're suggesting at the moment is using salt lamps or red light to work in the evening if you have to work, and just reducing the intensity of that so that when you stop work, you can then go to sleep when you require.
And another question from Janet, and me being a shift worker, and of course Erica too has done her hours before GP training. How long does sleep deprivation due to night shift affect our health?
That's a really tough question to ask because of the sleep history of the individual and other so I wouldn't guess on trying to find an answer to that. I would say that, as I said earlier on, if you do get a period where you're not having to work shifts and you are maybe on holiday or something, is just try and sleep and listen to your body and try and when you're feeling tired, then try and sleep, or if you are feeling alert, then get up and be out of the bedroom as well. So you're associating your bedroom with sleep rather than being awake.
Actually, about shift workers, just thinking, remembering to my night shifts and eating patterns, is there any kind of suggestions on how people should be kind of eating? Should they stick to the normal timings for food or eat during the night shift?
Yeah, so shift work isn't my area, if I'm honest. However, I would say that shift work, from my understanding, changes, so you can do 3 days on, 3 days off. So if you're eating and exercising and having enough light at a certain time, you're entraining your clock to that time. And then when you go and then come off it, your clock will still be on that time. And it normally takes, if you're, say, socially jet lagged for 3 hours, it will take 3 days of readjustment to get back to the clock. So it's a bit like when you go traveling and you go somewhere 7 hours away, it takes 7 days to adjust to the sun clock. So if you, I think with shift work, it's about light intake more than anything else. If you can, because light is the main cue that the body takes. So if you are doing it for a long period of time, then I would seek like professional advice. But if you're doing it for a short period of time, or if it fluctuates, then you can try and modulate the amount of light that goes in your eye by either increasing the light or decreasing the light at certain times to help you stick to the day-night cycle as closely as possible, really.
What other practical steps that we could advise on light? So sunglasses, I think, helped quite a bit with shift workers and also those who do suffer from insomnia. Red light and other practical steps that we could advise our listeners.
Yeah, blue light is key. So blue light is really important. You need blue light. It's the main stimulation that you get. And so getting enough blue light throughout the daytime. So if you are spending your time indoors, just think to yourself that the light I'm getting is so much dimmer than I actually appreciate. So I've got to go outside. I've got to spend a bit more time if I can outside by getting a full spectrum of light. and just it's about the intensities as well. So it's not just about the wavelength, but it's about those intensities as well. So as I said, working by a window, but make sure you're going outside so you can create vitamin D in your skin. But then also, as I said, try and make sure that it's appropriate time to reduce the amount of light throughout the day as well. In the evening.
What do we do during the winter time? Do you advise getting blue light into the house?
So there are those boxes that you can get which emit up to 10,000 lux, and they're very good. But it's about making sure that you have those at the right times. You don't want those on later in the afternoon or in the evening, because that's the time you want to reduce that light. You know, if you want that, then you can have that earlier in the morning, but they also prescribe maybe 30 minutes at a time. So it's about personalizing your own lighting. It's also about talking to people that you work with and saying, I'm having to work till very late at night and the lights in here are too bright. So can we do something about that? Can you buy me a lamp? Or can you reduce the amount of light? Can you buy me a salt lamp for my desk for the evening? Or can you increase the lighting in here generally? Or can I move desks to somewhere which is, or can we hot desk around so that I can work out near a window? So it's about having the confidence to go up to your bosses and say, or whoever you work with, and say, I need to make sure that I've got a space where I can have a break, which is daylit.
Right. So we do have enough evidence to be able to go up to our boss and say that it's unhealthy, and there are simple things that we could do to make sure that our working space is actually supporting our health and also actually supporting the work output.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. There's a organization called the Well Standards, and they look at the one of the things they look at is the light intake for any building where people work, and if your company is interested to adhering to it, you get the Well Standard certificate, and that now enables you to show that your building is enabling well-being for its employees.
Oh, this would be amazing if the NHS would apply this to all of the hospitals and where we work, especially in A&E. It does sound like we have to really work hard for what's healthy nowadays in our current working patterns and how we treat our employees, our colleagues, because it really is affecting our mental health. Our depression, anxiety is through the roof. And as you just said, it does change our behavior. So it really would be in the benefit of our employees and ourselves at home to really have a look at light patterns. Erica, is there anything else that we have missed out today?
No, but I'd love Nick to just repeat the 3-2-1 again before bed, just to consolidate.
Yeah, so if you think about creating an evening routine, so for our children, we create a routine so that they can get to sleep. It's important that we have one as well. So 3 hours before, stop work and have your last bout of exercise as well. So try not to exercise past that. 2 hours before, try and have your last meal and allow your body to start a period of reducing activity as well. And then 1 hour before, reducing the lights around the house, and no screen time is an ideal. So there are lots of things that people can do without the screen time, such as preparing for the next day, preparing their meals for the next day, or whether it's work or or their bag or whatever it is. Having a hot bath is a really good thing. That will help lower your core body temperature and initiate the sleep period as well. And so by doing that, you can then set a morning routine as well. So having the same the other side, by trying to give yourself maybe 20 minutes of sunlight, or eating breakfast by a window, even if it's a cloudy day, even if it's pouring with rain outside. That daylight has been termed a photon shower. And by giving yourself a photon shower in the morning, it will stimulate your brain into action and allow your body clock to sync with the sun clock.
Amazing, thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Nick, for joining us today. It was an incredible conversation, something that we really need right now in our personal lives and also for all of those who are working in offices. And thank you very much for everybody who has joined us here on Zoom and on YouTube. If you are on YouTube, please do hit the subscribe button to help us with our work. And do leave us a comment, share the link with everybody who you love so that they can live a longer and more fulfilling life with the lifestyle changes that they need. For everybody who is here on Zoom, we're going to go on our non-recorded session now, and you can chat with Nick and ask your burning questions. So thanks for now. We hope you join us next Sunday for another lifestyle discussion. And if you haven't joined us on social media, please say hello on LinkedIn as well as Facebook and Instagram. We will say hello there. So for now, bye everyone.
Bye.